From a defabricated garden shed in Rockland County, New York, USA, this is Stand Up with Pete Dominic. On today's episode, tips on keeping your cool when the family pet decides it's time to draw blood. And now, the podcast host who has no worries for such things because his dog is afraid of turkeys, Pete Dominic!
Indeed, you are right again, sir. Haven't seen the dog, by the way, in over a week. It's been the longest I've been without her. She's up with my parents since just after Christmas because we went out of town and they took her, and I don't know what to do with myself without Indy. Actually, can I be honest? I don't even miss her. I'm not going to lie to you. She doesn't understand what I'm saying. My dad is enjoying her. My parents are enjoying the dog. And she gives me a little bit of anxiety. She's always following me around everywhere I go and looking at me and needing something. And I've heard, it's my only dog I've ever had, but I've heard that other people's dogs, normal dogs, they don't really do that. They let you leave a room and come back. She's my shadow. She follows me everywhere. And my daughters are like, you love it. I'm like, I don't. I don't need that. It drives me nuts. She's always on top of me. Hey, what are you doing? I'm busy. What are you doing now? I can't do anything with you. How about now? Okay, you know what? You're going to go visit your grandparents. Have a good time. She'll be back soon. Thank you, Pete Co. Thank you for tuning in, pressing play, downloading, subscribing to the podcast. I have an excellent guest today. The great John Fugelsang joins me today. That's right, Flugelhorn is back. It's been a long time since we spoke at all, and we keep missing each other, and I finally caught up with him, and we had a great conversation, as always, almost an hour, and that's going to be my only guest on today's show. And I don't have much news for you either, because guess where I was all night when I'm normally here working on the pod, getting it ready? I was at the local town council meeting, at the Clarkstown Council meeting tonight, because we have a big controversy brewing that our town supervisor, the head guy, there's a supervisor and 5 councilmen, does not want to leave office. He supported term limits when he was a councilman, and now that he's the supervisor, he no longer supports them. So on the eve of his reelection, he has decided that he wants to stay in power, and he's got the support of at least 2 council members, and that's exactly what he's going to try to do. And so a whole bunch of people in our town went out and spoke up, including me at the microphone. What I did was I just quoted his thoughtful speech back in 2014 in support of term limits and asked him to comment on why he is completely reversed on that. Not the most important issue in your town, not as nearly as important, I think, as what happened in my school board fight. But the point of me sharing that with you is that as we watch Republicans in disarray at the national level, and you'll hear me say this with guests over and over, because I want other people to beat this drum as well, that you got to pay attention to what's happening. Don't sleep on what's happening at the local level with your Board of Education, with your town council, or whatever their equivalents are in your state or community. Get involved. So many of you have run for office, local office, and it's been so inspiring. I'd really like to myself. I just think the Oppo file on Pete Dominic is not great, based on things that I've said on TV, on stage as a comedian. The way they would be taken out of context and used against me would probably destroy my family, and that isn't worth it. And it stinks, because I think I'd be do a pretty good job at the local town council, and I really would like it. So I haven't completely shut the door on it, but I'm pretty sure it would be a bad bet for me. But many of you have succeeded in running for your town or your board, and shout out to all of you who have. Kathy Nathan, Susie Haveman, Sheila Bray, and so many others have volunteered on campaigns. It's so important to get engaged, to fight apathy and be involved. And I try to do as much of it as I can myself and put myself out there as much as I can as well. And it makes me feel purposeful. It makes me feel like I'm doing something good for my community, making a difference for my family. But mostly I've made a lot of really cool friends through it as well. So that's the reason why there's no opening news segment on today's podcast. But if you join me at tonight's hangout, I'll tell you what else happened at the town council meeting last night. I had words with a gentleman, and a cop had to get between us. Old Pete came marching out a little bit. It wasn't really much of a thing, but I just made an aside a snide comment to a guy as he was walking out. This guy was being really obnoxious. And I'll tell you what happened if you join me at tonight's subscriber-only hangout at 8 p.m. So also, I'm going to introduce my new intern who's starting with me this week, Odessa from University of Wisconsin. She's going to be at the hangout for a little bit, and you guys can make fun of me in front of her. It'll be very fun. I hope to see you there. StandUpWithPete.com if you're not a subscriber, and if you are, you should be getting an email with all of the details for that and everything else. That's on each day's show, including news links now. Now I'm including links to the news stories that I talk about here at the opening. But like I said, couldn't get that done for today's show, but I do have a great conversation with John Fugelsang, and I've got some great guests that I've booked coming up this week and next week already. I'm really getting ahead of that, but I want to get some new voices on the show. So people who have never been on, keep those suggestions coming. I read almost all the emails I get, and I know that you're making those suggestions in our Discord platform if you're a subscriber. But I think you're going to love my conversation with one of my oldest guests and friends, John Fugelsang, who joins me now. What can I say? Everybody knows John. He's an actor. He's a host. He's a comedian. He is a writer. I mean, the guy's done it all. And he's super smart, super funny, and a good friend. We talk about pretty much everything, including his hair here at the top. JohnFugelsang.com. Listen to him on SiriusXM. Monday through Friday, 9 to midnight, at John Fugelsang on Twitter. Let's do it. Fugelhorn. Boom. I reeled him in. John Fugelsang. Hello, my friend.
Hello. Hi. Welcome. Greetings.
So what are we doing with your hair? Like, what's the situation? Just take me through your hair over the past, say, year. I've seen posts on the internet. It's getting longer. There's a lot of Jesus material, but what are you dealing with anything?
Yeah. Look, I was raised abnormally Catholic, and we like to hang on to pain for a very long time. And so this is my pandemic mullet. It's sort of like, like if Beethoven and Loki had sex and had a child, that's the hair I'm going.
Oh, I like it.
Yeah. John Wick during a nationwide Moroccan oil shortage is the look I'm going. Like, goth country singer is really the look I want. At my salon, they call this the pet hoarder, this do. And with the glasses, it's even better, Pete. Here it's like, oh, when did Fran Lebowitz and Nick Cave become one person? I had no idea. So,
you really, in this time where gender means less, you seem to be demonstrating it with your face.
Well, thank you. Both my gender and my face have been rejected by both genders, so I'll take it.
I can't tell.
I cut 13 inches off last year, so I am dealing with my pain gradually. But this is my pandemic mullet, which will be the name of my next special, and I promise I'm going to get it all cut off very soon. But
it's just lovely. You look great.
You know what? Honestly, it's for the same reason I had a child. I did it for the material. So I've got about 2 more hours of jokes about it if you want.
Yeah, no, that's what you got to do. You got to have experiences to have material around those experiences. I learned that early on. I would sit and I would try to write and be creative, but I'm not that good that way. I never have been. So I was like, well, let me go have some experiences. And you've always done that. And look at you now with the hair. Your kid is grown up, so the material keeps coming with the family. But how have you been? How is the show? How is the late shift? Everybody wants to say hi to Chris Hassel. My whole audience loves him. How have you been?
You know, it's been pretty surreal. When they first came and said, hey, do you want to do this show at What the Fuck O'Clock? I thought, well, there goes comedy clubs ever again. And then suddenly there was a pandemic and there were no comedy clubs. Right. So it sort of, the show took on a whole different identity, and we were sort of like in COVID, just talking people off ledges. And in many ways, it became more like a pop culture call-in show because that seemed to be what people wanted more than politics. But something amazing happened in 2020, I think. So many people who were trapped indoors for the lockdown became so much more politically engaged. There are so many. I don't know if Joe Biden would have gotten 81 million votes, the most votes any candidate for office has ever gotten in history in this country, if 300 million of us hadn't been cooped up inside watching a disproportionate amount of news for the year leading up to that election. It always, comes down to the fact that the conservative status quo is always going to be organized, always going to have better turnout. For Democrats and, liberals or moderates or anti-evil people, then it all just comes down to, how much can you get the turnout? That's it. I mean, every election, it all comes, if there's high turnout, fascists don't win. If there's low turnout, fascists have a good day.
And COVID contributed, obviously, to everything and continues. I was thinking about it this morning. I was like, really, my life, everybody's life will never be the same, or it will have been changed in a myriad of different ways. How else did your life change as a result of COVID?
I mean, it's incredible to think about it. I think the worst part of COVID-19, Pete, and what we're not talking about is that the worst part of the pandemic is not going to come for about 12 to 15 years. And that's when all the people who are children now have grown up and are doing terrible one-person shows about their childhood during the pandemic. We're going to hit rock bottom in about a decade when every theater festival, every comedy festival, it's all going to be therapy on stage from Gen Z monologists doing their "Have you seen my childhood" monologue. So really the worst is yet to come, and we have to be ready for that.
I'm not sure how much all the doom predictions about the adversity that children at different ages dealt with in many ways, socially, developmentally, I suppose, is more important to some extent. But to some, I also think you wouldn't wish adversity on your child. Nobody wants that. You try to create opportunities for your kid to do well. I think most parents do. But I feel the adversity that they dealt with as a result of the pandemic wasn't as bad as some others feel. And one of the reasons I feel that way is because, my daughters weren't that deeply affected negatively by it. But number two, they did have the ability to socialize through screens, and that made a huge difference than it would have said in 1918. What do you think about my more positive outlook on the effect of the COVID pandemic and lockdowns on kids?
Pete, everyone's really terrified. What's going to happen to these young people if you let them look at too many screens? And I think we know the answer. They'll grow up to be completely normal, average American adults who look at too many screens. So that's just the way Homo sapiens seem to be going. But, when you look at other times that were horrible for children, be it the Spanish flu of 1918, be it World War II, when they first came out with the ice capades, there's so many awful eras we've lived through. And other kids have had it worse than ours. But every child is plateaued. I mean, and we're already a society that doesn't take educating children seriously. A serious democratic republic that wanted to last a long time would say, hey, here's a really patriotic idea. What if we had the best public school system in the entire country? But as you know, there's a lot of patriots who don't want us to have the best public school system in the whole country. So, we already have this weight in our back at not taking public education seriously enough as a culture. And now on top of that, I think kids lost 2 years of socialization. And you're right. They learned how to do it on screens. It's not the same. In some areas, like every kid, they will be ahead of where we were and they'll be behind where we were. And it'll all work itself out long term. I mean, I'm, of course, speaking for children who didn't lose a parent or a grandparent here, because over 1 million families were affected by this in that kind of way. I think it's still too early to see. We're supposed to be in this period now, Pete, that I call the great unclenching. The night Trump was elected, whoever you are, a part of your body just seized up, right? Your fists, your jaw, your sphincter, your the back of your neck. And then when Trump left, we were supposed to begin the great unclenching and release that. And 2 years on, we're still in PTSD, pandemic, Trump, shitstorm, dystopia. The news just never had such good ratings as when Donald Trump was in power and we all hated each other. And boy, they're trying hard to get those ratings back again.
Yeah, no doubt.
Which is why our entire Republican caucus is now like, if the comments section of C-SPAN came to life and ran for office, that's what we're looking at. So, I mean, it's supposed to be better, right? We're supposed to be like, and it is better. We're traveling and going to shows and being around. It's nothing like it was 2 years ago. The vaccines are miraculous science, blah, blah, blah. But we're still crazy, Pete Dominic. People out there are just being groomed to hate. And as long as you hate, there will be people to hate.
Yeah. The vaccines have become a touch point and divisive. And I think that goes in line with what's happening with public education. If our young people are taught not to ask questions and to just accept a certain kind belief system, a philosophy, which we could call, well, we could name it. We could talk a little bit about it. But if that happens, then you're not getting the education that's going to teach you to critically think and to be able to argue and debate and discuss and be curious. And then you're going to be controlled by the algorithm, whatever you search online. And then you've got officials questioning science the way that DeSantis has. My concern is what happens to the collective consciousness of America if we're just siloed as we have been. But if one of those silos, John, is so anti-science that it makes people not take vaccines, much less before we get to climate and other things.
Well, I would criticize these vaccine denialists, Pete, but that might hurt my chances of getting on Joe Rogan at some point. You know, it's nothing new, except it is, right? Because vaccine denial, it's about one vaccine, right? All the ones we've always had, and our parents had, all the vaccines the troops have always had that no one objected to, those vaccines it's just this one right now that, you know, scientists like Dinesh D'Souza have encouraged us to fear. You know, I think I'm all for asking the tough questions, and I don't think it's an over-reliance on big pharma or on bureaucrats. It's a reliance on science. Are there people who've had negative responses to the vaccine? I'm sure there are. But the reality is we are not having 3,000 American deaths a day anymore. We don't have these trucks for refrigeration of corpses piled up outside our hospitals anymore. And the data is so stark that the hospitalizations and deaths were so much worse in pro-Trump counties than they were in pro-Biden counties.
Yeah.
That it's like, it's like mail-in voting. At some point, the Republican establishment is going to have to say, you know what, maybe we're shooting ourselves in the foot a little bit here with all this. So, you know, COVID's not over, and we see that in China, and it's horrific in China right now. There's going to be new variants. I think the only hope, the good help, is that the variants may be weaker, but it's not over, man. And here in the city, you know, a lot more people wearing masks. The city has now formally requested everyone wear masks whenever they go indoors. And the CDC has approved booster shots for 5-year-olds and booster seats for Ben Shapiro.
Is that right? You know, he has now, he's selling them, as a matter of fact.
Indeed, he is.
On his show, he does a live read for his bulletproof booster seat, which I think is too much. It doesn't cover even half the kid's body.
I completely agree. But you know what? I'm a sucker for Ben Shapiro's big boy underpants. I bought so many of those a couple of years back.
Oh, the big boys. I did a live read.
Fascist pull-ups. It's really great.
Yes, I would do a live read at this point for a fascist pull-up.
Yeah. It's pull yourself up by your own diaper straps. It was so successful a couple of years ago. But I knew a guy at SiriusXM Patriot, so I got him in bulk.
I shared an office with a guy at SiriusXM Patriot, so I got fired. Anyway, no, I kid. He had nothing to do with it. It was Bannon. No, I kid. I think I don't want to. Just so you know, and publicly, I harbor no ill will towards the giant corporation that created me for 15 years. I owe them. They're my daddy still. So I wanted, though, to dig into not only.
I love your podcast, but I miss hearing you on the radio every day.
I miss being on the radio. I miss being on the radio. I miss live radio. I miss it. I miss it a lot. I do. If I could snap my fingers and recreate it, I would on my own. But I also don't. I don't know. At this point, 40, almost 47. How old am I? I think I'm 47. The idea of going back to work for a big company. Hey, at any age in any industry. Once you've started working for yourself, it's a hard thing, but there's pros and cons, trade-offs, as you know, but you're still killing it there, and I'm very excited for you. And I want to get back to our conversation about a couple other subjects I want to ask you about, which is just talking about the vaccines and the concern about the growing ignorance and fear being built around that. But that also coincides with the issue of LGBT. People are now so afraid of gay people. And I saw a graphic that... Remember when we used to argue about don't ask, don't tell, or gay marriage equality? People used to talk about the slippery slope, and I always made jokes about that. But I always thought about, like, the slippery slope was, you know, it's okay to have sex with animals would be, you know. But what they're saying is the slippery slope is now you can identify as whatever gender you want. The fluidity of all of that is really shocking the system and the culture for a lot of people having a really hard time accepting that. And it's creating a tremendous danger for people who identify as LGBTQ. Yeah. And you have been an advocate for that community as much as anybody I've ever known. A part of it, the fabric of it, John Fugelsang. So I just want to know your thoughts. You can almost speak, for them.
No, I can't.
Well, almost. You're around. And listen, what are your thoughts on that community and how things have changed a lot, even in the past few years, with the introduction of new language and fluidity around gender?
Yeah. Look, I'm just a really preachy ally, and that's it. I'm just a very preachy ally. But every generation has to find an acceptable group to hate, a group that God and Grandma and Grandpa would approve of me hating. Every generation we have to. And we were lucky as kids. We had communism. We had the Russians. They were right there. All made it easy. After the collapse of the Iron Curtain, it really shifted. South Africa was the bad guy for a while. Remember Lethal Weapon 2? That was good times. Like, they were the bad guys in every movie for like 6 months. And then it was terrorists, it was Muslims, undocumented immigrants, or as I call them, Christian refugees. And, gay people, always a good scapegoat. But then that hasn't been popular for a couple of years. And when their cult leader signed off on marriage equality, that had to go away. Donald Trump cured these people of a lot of convictions. Everyone who called us anti-American for opposing the Iraq war now hates the Iraq war and calls us warmongers, as Donald Trump told them. And they know that they can't, crap on gay rights anymore because of Trump. So the trans community and trans children and trans soldiers who want to serve a country that despises them. Hey, you know what? They're marginalized enough for right-wing Christians to shit all over them. And that's what it's all about, the revoltingly false Christianity of this country. You can't groom someone to be gay. You can't groom someone to be transgendered, but you can groom someone to hate them. And, the people who are talking about brainwashing our kids to accept these people are the ones who've been brainwashed their whole life to despise them. And that's curable. And we know from experience now that in 20 years, these homophobes will all deny they ever were. Mitt Romney will be claiming he was for marriage equality, but within 10 years. They're all going to just gloss over their own history. But what I say to these people is, well, why do you throw around this word liberty, this word freedom, if you're going to want to deny that freedom of existence, of expression to transgender citizens? I mean, what do those words mean, freedom and liberty? Donald Trump is allowed to identify as a Christian, but Bruce Jenner can't identify as Caitlyn. These are questions that are designed to make guys like me uncomfortable. And I'm at a point now where, as I get older, I'm either going to be open to the future and open to growing and being a more open-hearted, open-minded person, or I'm going to find some virtue in being loyal to the hang-ups of dead guys. And so far, being loyal to the hang-ups of dead guys hasn't done much for religion. It hasn't done much for me. So, trans people have always been here, and it's never been better for them than it is now. But it's also dangerous on a whole new level because a lot of ignorant people are now really uncomfortable with it. And it's a hard way to go through life. But I bring it back to Christianity all the time, Pete. You don't need to believe in the Bible as literal fact to know that the character of Jesus in the book stands up for marginalized people. Whoever's being crapped on, that's who Jesus is there for. The poorest of the poor, the lepers, the prostitutes, the tax collectors, whoever's hated. When he heals the teenaged gay male lover of a centurion, the despised foreign minorities like the Samaritans, everyone was hating on, that's who Jesus, the character in the book, fictional or myth or real or son of God, whatever you want it to be, that's who he stands up for. Today in his movement, it's all about shitting on the most marginalized. Yep. I mean, whether they are the Christian refugees at our border, whether they are trans soldiers, trans kids, whether they are the poorest of the poor, Syrian refugees. I mean, we keep seeing this play out over and over again. And generally, the people who talk the loudest about their faith in Jesus are the ones who don't care about the least of these. Jesus is, he's really more their mascot. He's a prop they wave around to claim virtue. And someone whose teachings they follow, because as we've discussed in the past, you can follow Jesus, you can follow the modern Republican Party. You can't really follow both.
Well, but you can, because your interpretation has always been thoughtful and I would say pretty historically accurate. And I always love to hear you. Biblically accurate. In terms of, I always love the debates. They go viral when you have them with people over Jesus and the Bible and Christianity. But the reason why their interpretation is different, and you know all about it. You've interviewed all the same experts, but you didn't even need to because you've been studying this and watching this and grew up in this. It's become this more patriarchal, masculine, authoritarian, overwhelmingly white, violent form. And I don't, it's caught on. It's a whole huge thread of Americans that believe in this type of white, right-wing Christian nationalism. I don't know what language you use to describe it. How do you get through to them, if you do ever? Do you get through to them? Do you talk to any of them?
No, you can't. They're in a cult, and you can't reach them. Okay, we have to accept the fact that we are dealing with a subset of our neighbors and loved ones and coworkers, and high school friends who just can't spell "your" correctly.
I messed that and then up a lot, so I don't think that's fair.
Sure, they're. They're beyond reason. They're beyond facts. It's not really my interpretation of the Bible. I grew up with their interpretation. I grew up thinking that Jesus didn't like gay people and women who have abortions and immigrants. And then I began reading the thing and realized, oh my God, everything the right wing bases their Christianity on is based more on the hangups of dead guys and nothing I can actually find in the Bible. I keep looking for the part of the Bible where God or Jesus say abortion is a sin, and you should go harass women outside clinics, where God or Jesus say that poor women who are pregnant should be punished with greater poverty. Keep looking for the verse where it says that a fetus has more rights than a woman. God actually says the opposite in Exodus. I keep looking for the part that says the state should have the power to force a rape victim to carry and bear her attacker's child.
Yeah.
I can't find it anywhere. And I keep asking my Republican friends to show me where in the Bible any of this is, because technically God's the least pro-life character in the book. Same with the homophobia. None of that in the Jesus parts.
Yeah.
You want to follow, like I consider myself I would like to be a conservative Christian, because conservative Christian means you're true to the teachings of Jesus. According to Matthew 25, that is, you gather the individuals and nations, and Jesus will judge nations by how well they take care of the poor, take care of the sick, are kind to those in prison, and welcome the stranger. Throw into that Jesus said those who live by the sword will die by the sword. Not a big fan on retribution or weaponry. Throw into that Jesus overturned the death penalty, overturns eye for an eye in Sermon on the Mount. Honestly, I know it's important to keep Christ in Christmas, but I'd like to get him back into Christianity first.
Yeah,
because I would love a government based on Christian values. So I guess they're my opinions, but they're only my opinions because that's what's in black and white or red in the Bible text.
We're so far apart from our brothers and sisters who believe those things.
In some ways we are. In some ways we're not. I still believe our commonalities outweigh our differences. I still believe that they're all reachable to some degree. And I don't believe in hating them or fighting them for its own sake. I believe in having good faith debate in public. You're never going to convince them, right? You'll never convince your right-wing cousin that Jesus doesn't hate trans people or immigrants or illegals. But what you can do is you can debate them in public, and you can reach the bystanders. You can reach their kids. You can reach their wives and mothers and people who are listening to the debate, because that's where it plays out. And I'm happy to discuss what's actually in the Bible and what's not. But that's the racket, right? They got the followers of Jesus to vote against everything Jesus ever talked about by talking about abortion, which Jesus never talked about. And Jerry Falwell, by the way, never even mentioned abortion until 5 years after Roe v. Wade was decided. It was in the mid to late 70s where they realized they weren't going to be able to use racism anymore post-civil rights. How was the Christian right going to get its mojo back? And they picked this issue 5 years after the very uncontroversial Roe v. Wade decision, and it's grown and grown and grown. So, I get that they want to criminalize abortion. I'd like Democrats to use the right language. I'm just in favor of taking away their camouflage, Pete. I just feel like we can very respectfully say, okay, great, but if you're going to use the word Christian to give yourself this veneer of virtue, then we're going to get down to brass tacks. Mike Pence passes this law in Indiana that he signs for the religious freedom law, which is the freedom to pretend Jesus hates the same gay people you did. I never heard a single journalist ask Mike Pence, hey, your religious freedom, but where does your holy book tell you to do this? Where does Jesus tell you to do it? They use religion as a cudgel, as a bat to hit people with. They don't want to actually follow what the religion prescribes. Some of the best Christians I've ever known have been atheists, and some of the most godless heathens have been believers. So, I care about this stuff because I was raised with it, but I also care about it because I think we have to take away the right wing's veneer of Christianity. They don't really mean it. I know a lot of nice conservative Christian people. They don't vote for nice people, and they don't vote for nice policies.
When it comes to all that, those religious beliefs now have started to overlap and coincide with a lot of these made-up narratives that fall under the QAnon heading about certain predictions about certain places and certain people and so on. And so it's gotten really confusing to try to follow. And there's some great journalists who do that. But now all these traditional things, arguments and divisive things that you said about sexual orientation, abortion, and so on, now they get overlapped with, and I'll just say this one specific thing, that somehow Democrats, generally speaking, Democrats, liberals, progressives, we are pedophiles, we are groomers, which means we're grooming kids to be blank, to have sex with them, and even at the most extreme, I guess, we drink the blood of scared children because it gives us enjoyment, a high. And whatever it is. So there's this whole ideology now that, and I heard this woman, the whoever that lady of Libs of TikTok lady is, she was on with Tucker Carlson, and I watched a huge part of the conversation. It was frightening because she talked about how people, did you see it?
Yeah.
How people in the LGBT community, she's very general. She just kept saying they are evil. They are evil. And when you get that out there and our easy availability to have dangerous weapons, we've seen this happen over and over, that gay people, transgender people being targeted and slaughtered. And that's where it is. I don't know what to think.
But that's fundamentalism. That's the essence of fundamentalism, Pete. And we can call it Christian nationalism. That's a great term, white nationalism. But ultimately, it's the extreme conservative wing of all the world's religions, right? That's fundamentalism.
Yes.
And I submit to you and your wonderful viewers, extreme right-wing conservative Christianity has more in common with extreme right-wing conservative Islam than it does with moderate or liberal Christianity.
Yeah.
Because the more conservative your faith is, doesn't matter, Hinduism, Judaism, the more right-wing your faith is, the more you believe the same points. Number one, women are second-class citizens. It doesn't matter what religion. The more extreme conservative it is, the more that religion will tell you women are second-class citizens. Gay is evil. Sex only for procreation. Violence is okay if my side does it. And other religions can exist, but we all know that I'm part of the one true one. It doesn't matter which religion it is. Fundamentalists of all faiths embrace these 5 tenets. And that's what we have to beat. The worst thing that I think liberals do is group all religion in together. There's so much there's so much diversity in the Democratic Party. There's so much diversity in religion. And if we're going to start setting laws based on people's religious beliefs, then, fuck it, Rastafarians, step it up already.
Yeah, I agree with that.
We have to be able to call them out because it's always, Pete, the fundamentalists of all the world religions. And I've had this fight with I've had this fight with Bill Maher. It's if you actually believe that you're on the one team of the one true God, then anyone who opposes you is on the side of Satan. And I'm not going to sit down with Satan and negotiate school curriculum or what gender is.
Right, exactly.
So then you see how the violence becomes completely acceptable. It's the otherizing. And they do it, calling them illegals. Have you ever heard a single right-wing politician or a single right-wing media figure call a Caucasian lawbreaker an illegal?
It's very rare. It's a very rare. Yeah, that's a good point. I haven't heard of.
But that's otherizing. It's making them appear less than human. So call them illegals. Look, if we wanted undocumented immigration to end in this country, we could end it by the end of the month by locking up the white people who do all the hiring, right? That's the solution. You've got this wall at the border, but it can never hide the giant help wanted sign. We have a decades old neon help wanted sign at our border, and you can't hide it because we're hiring. Yeah. So any politician who's talking about doing something about illegal immigration, but they're not talking about locking up the white folks, dangling them jobs, is a politician who is lying to your uncle racist and your aunt dead inside as they watch Tucker and drool on the clicker. Democrats could pick up on this. They're not going to do it. Republicans will never say lock up the people who do the hiring because that would put Trump in jail and our entire economy would collapse. The immigration
fight infuriates me because so many people in the media that covered the 2013 comprehensive immigration reform that passed out of the Senate but was not taken up for a vote by John Boehner, or at the time was the speaker, because he didn't want it to pass so they wouldn't have it as a divisive wedge issue anymore. They forget, they act like there wasn't billions in security, border security in that comprehensive immigration reform. It was going to normalize the Dreamers. It was a huge compromise by both sides, who were criticized by both sides. And the point of that is it's the Republican Party.
Part of the Republican Party's 2012 autopsy report that we have to do better with non-white voters. But you know what happened. Sean Hannity was on TV every night saying, this is not amnesty. This is not amnesty. And then the focus groups came in. And the Fox News viewers did not like the bill. And literally the next night, Hannity was on the air calling it amnesty. But and Marco Rubio ran away from his own bill.
The only special interest group that is interested in preventing anything from happening on immigration is media. Right-wing media is the only, because it's not like...
right-wing politicians. The right wing doesn't want anything to happen because, again, if you got rid of all the undocumented immigrants, our economy would collapse and a salad would cost $75. I mean, exploiting marginalized brown human labor is kind of an old tradition in this country. It goes way back to avoid paying a living wage. And Trump's hired undocumented people in 2 different centuries. If they actually wanted to stop it, they could stop it. And they'd stop crossing the border because there'd be no jobs. They don't want to stop it. Now with abortion gone, Pete, how are they going to raise money with Roe v. Wade gone? They need undocumented immigration. They need it to be as bad as possible. They need floods of migrants because, again, what do they have to offer hardworking white people besides umbrage?
Let's talk about the Supreme Court. I know you talk and have a lot of thoughts about that. I mean, where are we today? I mean, no matter what we pass at the state or federal level, we have to always be concerned about this same threat we've been talking about, the right-wing Christian nationalists, when it comes to the Supreme Court. So what do you see playing out as our children grow up in this country, John?
Look, I'd love to see the Democrats take a page out of the right-wing playbook. Remember how we mocked all the repeal Obamacare votes every week for years and years? They'd have repeal Obamacare. We'd think, these Republicans, it's never going to happen. What are you doing? Well, they had nothing to offer their base but umbrage, right? So they kept having these votes, and it kept the base riled up. It kept the base engaged. It was actually smart politics on their part. I want to see the Democrats take the fight to the other side when it comes to the Supreme Court on 2 fronts. Number one, there should be a serious movement started outside the White House to force Joe Biden to add 4 more justices. It should be so hardcore when we consider that, at least 3 of them, maybe 5 of them, just deliberately perjured themselves.
Imagine if the Democratic nominee became the nominee because he or she campaigned on that promise.
Well, FDR never really tried to do it. FDR had a block of 3 justices who were undoing all of the New Deal. And so FDR came out and said he was going to do it. And then one of the justices backed down and FDR never did it. He was carrying a big stick. I want to see the Democrats actually act like Republicans and bring the fight and say, too bad, you guys are corrupt. This is rigged. Come on. Gorsuch should not be there. That seat was stolen. The first black president was the only president to be denied an up or down vote on his duly appointed nominee. And we should bring up it was the first black president because I want to hear them deny that it wasn't racism every day. They should have to deny that it wasn't because of Obama's race. Kavanaugh lied, perjured themselves on the stand. I would say, arguably, Amy Coney Barrett is the closest thing to a legitimate Donald Trump appointee, but over 50 million Americans had already voted by the time she was appointed and rushed into office. Then you got Clarence Thomas. So I'm sorry, I want to see one movement to impeach these people, starting with Gorsuch, and then I want to see another movement to add more justices to the court. Put these fascists on the defense.
John, where are you on the Democratic Party as it stands today? You can talk about any part of the Democratic Party, because I'm a big fan. I mean, huh?
I've never belonged to the Democratic Party, but, Republicans keep forcing me to vote that way.
Well, what do you think of what they've accomplished in the first 2 years of Biden? I mean, like, he has been potentially the greatest president in terms of accomplishments of our lifetime, one could argue. I mean, it's
this guy is
80
in 2 years. 80 years old with a stutter. Can we get a 100-year-old guy in? Let's run a 100-year-old guy and see how much shit he gets done. My God, when you're 80 and you're not doing anything else, so just focus on your work. My God. I mean, Biden got so much done. He's like a lesbian Scientologist, Pete. He's getting so much done in one day. CHIPS Act, PACT Act, infrastructure. 2021, we saw the lowest childhood poverty rate in the history of this country because of targeted government spending, which proves we can do it if we want. No one's talking about the fact that this administration was so tight on getting shots into the arms of rural African Americans that as of now, Black folks are no longer the hardest hit group by COVID. Like, he's not even getting praise for some of the most amazing things he's done, but bringing back manufacturing to the country, infrastructure, and do keep in mind, if Joe Biden decides to run again in 2 years, he's 80 now, right? So in 2 years, he'll be 137 if he runs. He's going to have all the work from the infrastructure bill finally in place. People will be seeing roads and repairs by 2024. Likewise, with Medicare being able to negotiate for lower drug prices, caps on insulin, people will have had a chance to actually see that this party has done things that have helped them. And, look, Build Back Better was great. Limp Back Later was really great. It's the most environmental spending I call it Limp Back Later. Even more so, we're about to be consumed with this 2-year psychodrama of the Hunger Games GOP House edition with no
before you get to that, I was talking about the Biden administration's accomplishments, many of which you just listed. I'd also give a lot of credit to Democratic leadership when it comes to the January 6th committee, especially, which was in fact bipartisan. Totally. What do you think of that? Of the way they ran things like a damn TV show?
Listen, I'll go over it all day long. I didn't even get to Biden decriminalizing weed on the federal level or student loan debt forgiveness. I mean, oh my God, 80-year-old. I grew up with Joe Biden. I liked anti-apartheid Senator Joe Biden. Didn't really like so much the Clarence Thomas hearings. Liked the VP who was coming out for gay marriage. Didn't like the senator for Iraq war. Old Joe Biden is my favorite of all the additions. I love old man Joe Biden. And the House did a miraculous thing with the hearings. They kept the January 6th ball in the air for one more year. We're still talking about it. We still care. They were done as really smart TV presentations. My unpopular opinion is that a big part of this was the Get Ron DeSantis Elected Committee, and I don't know if the Democrats realize that. I think that Mitch McConnell found a way to get Democrats to solve his Donald Trump problem. In that one book by the New York Times authors, they said that on January 6th, McConnell said, let the Democrats deal with the son of a bitch. And I just saw a lot of Republican staffers testifying to Liz Cheney about solving Mitch McConnell's Trump problem. Again, Ron DeSantis is what people need to focus on, not Trump. I don't care what happens to him. I don't care if he's in jail or not. But to get back to your point, I think the January 6th committee was moving. It was powerful. And it really showed that Americans do care about democracy, and they will show up to vote for democracy, because who else was going to cover it, Pete? Kevin McCarthy voted to throw out the will of the American voters on January 6th.
Right. Yeah.
I'm not scared of the thugs in MAGA hats who attacked democracy that day. I'm scared of the thugs in bad suits who attacked democracy that night and are still in power.
Oh, I think I think his suits are nice. I think he looks good in his suits.
He shops at the same place as Paul Ryan. It's awful. But and Eric Cantor, all the young guns. The Young Guns. Remember that gay porn film? Yeah.
They're all gone. They're all gone.
Oh, but one more point. Hakeem Jeffries was named leader unanimously. Yeah. We're going to have 2 years of the Republicans just at each other's throats. Kevin McCarthy has made so many concessions to so many right-wing people who hate him so they can advance policies the majority of Americans don't want. It's going to be hideous for a mediocrity like Kevin McCarthy. Meanwhile, the Democrats are going to have 2 years to get their new machine oiled and running. So, conditions are great for, I guess, another red wave in the Senate in 2024.
Hakeem Jeffries. He's got Nancy Pelosi as his consigliere. He can run anything he wants by her. I'm sure I bet he's got a great relationship with her, and he's going to.
Oh, yeah. It's like Pope Francis and Pope Benedict over his shoulder, except Pope Benedict did make Francis wear a trainee badge for the first 5 years.
What happened? Joe, what happened when they would pass each other in a Vatican hallway? What would that exchange be like?
I know exclusively what happened. Francis would call Benedict Mac Daddy. Benedict called Francis Daddy Mac.
Is that right?
It was like crisscross. Yeah, just like crisscross.
That is so cool. That is so very impressive. They're so hip.
In the movie, Jonathan Pryce and Anthony Hopkins, they do a whole dance. It's great.
I didn't see it. I started watching it and then I turned it off. Okay, final thing.
It's actually a good movie. But
is it really? Yeah, I've heard it is. But
Benedict is a weird figure, like really weird figure, really regressive. Another homophobe who loved his red Gucci loafers. But Benedict was the guy who came out and said that every country on earth has a moral responsibility to provide health care to its poorest citizens, regardless of their ability to pay. That's actually a pope talking like the Nazarene in the book talks. And so for me, those are the kind of things that matter and should be remembered more. Obviously, he did a lot of shitty things, but I this in politics and religion, you got to point out the good when you can find it.
Yeah, I mean, yes, of course. One last thing I want to ask you, I should have given you a heads up ahead of time to think of somebody to suggest to recommend. You do great interviews of authors, of journalists, of artists. I'm always looking for great guests. Who is somebody I should have on the show, or who's somebody that you're reading that you like? Give me a recommendation here at the end, or two, whatever.
Heather McGee, the Sum of Us.
Yep. I know Heather, and she's been on. She's great. She's got a new podcast. She's so great.
Amazing.
Yeah,
amazing. Kristen Dumais, Jesus and John Wayne.
Never had her.
Okay, she's fantastic, and her book's fantastic, and it's all about the stuff I talk about with the the anti-Christians.
Yeah. Awesome. I will definitely reach out to her. You'll have to give me
Kirsten Dumez. I'll email it over.
Send me her contacts if you can.
Whatever Pete Dominic's doing. I mean, I love your show. I listen to you all the time. I love what you do. I miss seeing you. I'm so inspired by what you do. I don't know if I could do it as well as you do it, Pete. And by the way, the disco bomb shelter studio look is fantastic.
Thank you.
I'm just beginning to work with bookshelves. I waited till 3 years in a pandemic to have shelves behind me. I just,
working at Sirius, I never expected this benefit, but I got so many books sent to me there. Yeah. And I started decorating with them, and I wanted to raise the girls around a lot of books. It was just something I always did. So I kept most of those books, and I just keep building bookcases. Most of them I haven't obviously read or read some of them, but I just I love it. And this is my shed. This is my shed space. This is the beautiful whole independent media dream, buddy.
It's fantastic. Yeah, I love your studio space, man. It's really, really terrific.
80 square feet of just glory.
I just moved. I moved last year, and I've been doing my show upstairs in the office for like a year, and now I've just begun doing it down here in the basement. And it's really nice. It's like we're only doing one night a week at SiriusXM. And when we go in there, there's nobody there. I mean, before pandemic, it used to be there'd be some rappers in there. Right. But like there's like my producer Thea and I are there in the studio, and there's no one. It's like a kid riding his big wheel around the halls. It's empty. So I'm trying to get as tricked out in my home studio as you are, Mr. Dominic.
Well, thank you very much for talking to me, John. I've got all that on the record. I thought you might have thought I might have stopped, but I really appreciate it, man. Very, very much.
Oh, listen, no, I love what you do, and I love that you invited me on your show. Thank you so much.
Let's do it again soon.
Well, let's do some live shows together, too, because, as much as I'm a fan of Pete Dominic, the broadcaster extraordinaire, I love seeing you on stage, and I love doing shows with you.
Anytime, bud. Let's definitely get together and do that. That would be really fun. That would be really fun. Yeah. Seriously. Yeah. We could do stand up like we used to. We could.
You were doing those dates with Ophira and Finnegan, and I thought, my God, that's a great lineup.
Yeah, it was a great lineup, but like we didn't sell many tickets. I mean, it's like it's hit or miss now post COVID, much less whoever the personalities are, given their followings and the club and where it is. You don't know where people that like you live, so you don't know exactly where to go when you whatever. So it's always a tough thing, but it certainly was fun working with them. They're such great friends and really funny, obviously. So, yeah.
I'm going back on stage. I'm going to be workshopping some new material in Garrison, New York on the 21st of January. And you can find all that info on my website or my Twitter or wherever.
Yeah, definitely check that out, and I'll link to it as well in the show notes. All right, I'm officially stopping, but stay right there. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Pete.
And there he goes, everybody. John Fugelsang. JohnFugelsang.com, at John Fugelsang. And, of course, listen to him every Monday through Friday, SiriusXM Progress, Channel 127, 9 p.m. East to midnight. So great to catch up with John, and so grateful that we got the opportunity to reconnect. And I'd like to do that with a lot of my old friends and guests from the old show whenever possible. So who would you like to hear? Always great to get your suggestions. standupwithpete@gmail.com. That's it. That's all I've got for you. I hope to see you tonight at our hangout. If you're a paid subscriber, I hope that you will be there. We'll introduce our new intern, my new intern, Odessa. That'll be fun, and have a good time. It's been a couple weeks, I think, now, since we've hung out. So if you're not a paid subscriber, you don't know what you're missing. That's the benefit, the biggest benefit, really, outside, of course, this daily podcast. So come hang out with us and join us tonight at 8 p.m. East. Go to standupwithpete.com or patreon.com/Pete Dominic. All right. I will talk to you tomorrow. Great guests joining me again. Ruth Ben-Ghiat, Christian Finnegan, Ophira Eisenberg, and you never know who else. I might probably going to drop something over the weekend as well, because it's been a busy weekend. Lots to talk about. Lots of people to talk to. All right, that's it. I'm out. John Carroll, take over.
Stand up, show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. She's the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up, stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up, they had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. Alright, we got to speak up, we got to reach up, and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up.